and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, step right up for another episode of Cardboard Insanity.
Shut up and sit down.
Okay, everybody, it's your favorite time of the week.
Yes.
It's Cardboard Insanity time.
Woohoo!
And we're late again today. It's the Horsey Avenger and yours truly.
Well, I was having too much fun this weekend.
Oh, we had a lot of fun this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm actually incredibly tired.
That sounds familiar.
You went to a concert Friday night.
I did. I went to see Blue October.
At the beautiful Fillmore in beautiful downtown Detroit.
The Fillmore is a great venue.
The Fillmore is actually a nice place.
Yeah, it
Detroit,
really is.
The rest of Detroit, not so much.
No.
It's it's a fine place if you like murder.
Yeah, the rest of it looks like the apocalypse actually happened.
It does,
so.
And that's why they film every post-apocalyptic movie in Detroit.
Right,
because they're like, well, if things go wrong and we happen to blow up a lot of buildings accidentally, no one's even going to notice. So there's that.
Yeah.
And, basically all hope has already left this place. I see all these Detroit against everybody and Detroit strong, and I'm like, all right, it's great that but the people that are wearing those shirts don't actually care and or live there. The people that live there have different opinions on things.
That's just it. It's like the people that have the strongest opinions about Detroit don't even live there.
No, and I don't mean to crap on Detroit.
It's like get down there, and if you want to change it, then be part of the change. And changes are definitely happening.
Well,
they
are. It's a lot less murdery than it was a few years ago.
You've only been here for 4 years, so I've lived around here a lot longer than that. So
since Dirt was young.
Dirt was young. I'm like, wait a minute, who's Dirt? Oh,
who's Dirt? Yeah. When your pet dinosaur was in the shop.
Yeah.
How was Blue October?
Blue October was amazing.
I should have gone.
You really should have. I was concerned.
What, that I didn't go?
No,
about
the show, because he's all happy now, and he was at his best when he was absolutely miserable and angry.
It's true. He
wrote some of the greatest angry songs.
Not a lot of music is written when people are happy. Not a lot of great classic music. The perfect example of this is Scott Weiland. Scott Weiland wrote his best music when he was struggling through drug addiction, and then when he was sober, his music wasn't nearly as compelling. Well,
you can't say that about Blue October now, because his last album is phenomenal. It really is great, and the way that we're able to weave in the older songs with the newer songs
was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. It was beautiful.
Good. I'm glad you guys had fun. And you had tacos at Hot Taco Detroit.
I did.
Yeah, I should have just gone, if nothing else, for that.
I mean, that was happiness right there.
It is.
The evening could have ended, and I'd be like, yeah, this was great. I had Hot Taco Detroit.
Detroit.
Yeah.
No. Tacos. Icky Detroit. And then yesterday, which was Saturday, we did a demo day at Nerdygeddon. We did our store splash for Tally Ho. So we took Tally Ho to promote that and do some demos. But we also took the Rose King along.
We did.
And had more success with the Rose King than with Tally Ho, which I'm not super surprised, because the Rose King is such an amazing game. But they, I think they've got some new product to carry there because of us going in and doing demos, and that was fun. And while we weren't doing demos, we were playing other games, of which one of the games we played we're going to review today. But the Horsey Avenger has now played Flux, so her life is complete.
I don't know why. I think my life was complete before that, and now I'm like...
Now your life as a gamer is complete.
Is that right?
Yeah, I do feel
it's not my game.
No. It's not my game either.
No.
A lot of people like it. It sold a lot of copies. More power to you.
Like, I was trying to end it as quickly as possible. I even contemplated throwing goals down that would make your cards work towards it, just to be done.
How can we just get this over with? But we also played... what else did we play? This game and Tally Ho.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and in the morning yesterday, we played Port Royal. I taught you
We
Port
did.
Royal.
And we
Another
played
awesome
that
game from Alex
We played
Pfister.
that a couple times, and
Yep.
I really like it.
That came in with our order that included Food and Shade Magnate, which is sitting on the
Yeah.
table in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so excited to teach you that.
I know, you're still grinning from ear to ear.
Oh, I kind of can't believe I actually have it.
Mm-hmm.
I swore to myself I wasn't going to buy it, but Game Surplus had copies in at a price that was probably cheaper than what the pre-order price ordering directly from Splotter was, because I think that was about 80 euros.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that included shipping. So by the time you do that, you're probably looking at $130. Game Surplus had it for $100.
Yeah.
And I was able to get a Ding and Dent copy for $5 off. So,
Which I'm still looking for the Ding and the Dent.
I know.
I didn't see it.
I feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me is like, oh, well, I guess if that's what they call a Ding and Dent. So the moral of the story is, and I've bought a lot of Ding and Dents from Game Surplus during the years because they're always like that. I'm always like, where's the damage?
Yeah.
And there's a rose-breasted grosbeak looking for food. He's starving.
Oh, yes.
He's like, people,
Where's
feed
my
me.
food?
There's nothing there for him to eat. After we record this bit, we'll have to feed the birdies.
I was going to say, when we're done with this, we'll feed the birdies.
Yes. So yesterday was super successful.
Mm-hmm.
And today we went to a really nice part of Michigan and had lunch with a friend for her birthday.
Yes.
And
A surprise luncheon.
had a woefully under... Well, it just wasn't good. I was trying to come up with something creative to say. That. Underwhelming.
It was underwhelming because everybody talked up this restaurant so highly. And I actually had been at this restaurant a couple years ago, and it was good.
Yeah,
when I'm not sure what happened.
Their red sauce was pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
But the stuff that I had was completely tasteless, as was yours.
Yeah, mine had there wasn't even any seasoning on this.
No, it was terrible. It was so bad you didn't take it home.
Right.
So it was, I think you ate about 3 bites, and then for whatever reason, they brought us a little extra bowl of pasta with red sauce. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And so you ate most of that. But
I did.
That
I
red
finished
sauce
that
was
off.
actually pretty good. So today's show, we are going to wrap up part 2 of the interview with Gil Hova, talking about Bad Medicine's Second Opinion, which the Kickstarter is ending any day now.
Oh, is it?
I think it might be ending tomorrow.
Okay.
So we have part 2 of the conversation with Gil, and then for our game of the week, this is sort of outside of what we do, in that this is a game that I would imagine most people know about.
I would think so.
Its pedigree is such that this is another one that you probably don't have gamer cred till you've played the original, which you haven't played. So
and I
you're
haven't,
a
so
failure
I
at
guess
life.
I still don't have my gamer credit.
As a 2-player game, you no longer need the big brother because 7 Wonders Duel is exactly what you want for a 2-player's version of 7 Wonders. So we're going to review that. That's a lot more popular of a game than we normally do.
That's true.
So, I think it's one of those things where we said we weren't going to be dogmatic about just doing indie games.
Right.
This is a game that we're very much enjoying, and there's stuff to explore, so it makes good sense for us to do a review of this one. Because anybody that's on the fence about this, hopefully we can steer you in the right direction. So we've got that coming up. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my first video review is going to appear very soon.
I'm very excited.
It's super cool. I have many things to learn about how to light and things like that, but I will say that I learned the software, so I felt pretty good about that. I accomplished something there. So.
Yes, and I did see a little snippet. You did show me the beginning of it, and sitting in front of our game library.
Yes, I made an excellent backdrop. And I have a face for radio, so this might turn people off.
True.
But I will post on the blog when that goes live, and I'm sure I'll link it on Twitter, and I'll shamelessly self-promote myself. But,
absolutely.
I'm hoping that doing video reviews will help get more listeners for the podcast, and then the podcast will point the people to the video reviews, and pretty soon we shall take over the board game world as the preeminent journalists in board gaming.
Yes.
Boom. Let's go back a little bit here.
Yeah.
I want to sort of play devil's advocate just a little bit, and this is not even remotely my stance on this, but in the BGG world, so let's go back to the, you have 1,500 pieces to check out, and if you fail one of them, whatever it is, that's what the game becomes known about.
Mm-hmm.
The public outcry on these things, and it's the vocal minority, it is not the majority, so I don't want to say all of BGG, but you always have your, we'll call it a handful, but let's say 5 or 10% of an audience just flies off the handle on stuff. And those folks, if they're listening, will take everything you just said as whining.
Mm-hmm.
Which is almost astounding to me, because we've got to a point where in this hobby we feel, and again, this is a gross generalization, but I feel like the majority of the hobby feels very entitled to things. Mm-hmm. So we're entitled to have the game right away, and we're entitled to complain if you misspelled the word or, which I'm looking at a game that's on my table right here, and they misspelled the word or in the rule book. It said OU. I don't know what happened. But it's sort of disheartening when you see those people, and that must, I suppose that takes a little bit of skin hardening to learn to deal with that nonsense complaint.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of complaints that are totally 100% valid. If a game comes out and something in it is unplayable, like rendered totally unplayable, then 100% people should complain. If it's good, but if it's the kind of thing where it's like, games are a luxury product. I think that's really what it comes down to.
They certainly are, aren't they?
Games are a luxury product, and I think that's a big part. We are making a luxury product. So that's one big reason why there's an expectation of 100% success rate. So like when something's misspelled, it takes a little bit of that shine away. So I completely understand, why the game is known for that one thing, and that's why I kept on putting in the disclaimer of, this is not a complaint. It's just reality. And I think it's something, and that's why I also explained it as, this is not me complaining. This is me warning people getting into the, getting or thinking. I think there's also this thing. This is a phenomenon I see happen all the time on BGG. So a game comes out with a terrible rule book. This happens all the time.
My biggest pet peeve, Gil. My absolute biggest pet peeve.
And the reason why so many bad rule books come out, right?
Because I'm not proofreading them and doing setup for them.
That is not correct. That is not a correct.
It's got to be one of the answers.
No, okay. that is not even close to. The reason is rule books are very, very, very hard to write.
Okay.
I mean, and not even like they're a little tricky. No, they're not a little tricky. They are one of the hardest parts to get right in a game. They are ridiculously hard. So they require significant testing, just as much as the graphic design. I wouldn't say just as much as the game, but the importance of the testing the rule book is vital. Like, you have to have people. I had probably 25, 30 people blind read the rule book for the networks, and then I had a bunch of blind tests of the networks and blind tests are just horrifying. They're so painful. It is so painful. So if you don't know what a blind play test is, you give a game group your game. They've never played before. So you hand them the game. You sit down, you watch them open it, you watch them fumble through the rules, try to learn it out of the rule book, and you just see what causes friction. And It is horrifying, they because even a good rule book, players will often get led down the wrong track, and they'll often like screw something up, and for most of the things, you really should not say anything. You should not interject. I only interject if they're really going down a wrong path. Like, okay, I'm going to teleport in and I'll say that this part that you're doing is not correct. Let's play it the correct way. Here's the correct way. I've already made a note to clarify that in the rule book. Okay, as you were. And so that part is really, really, really hard. So here's where it gets better. So you have this blind tested rule book. You have this fantastic rule book. It's great. You've written all this. Fantastic. And now you want to release the game in Germany. So now you have a translator do your German rule book. Well, guess what? You've got to test that translation. It's not enough that you have a proofreader do it. You've got to test it. Because I see this all the time with games from Europe, the English rule book is not very good because they never had an opportunity to test it. And it's easy to see why. It's hard to get testers in another country, you know? Yeah. It's easier than it used to be, sure, but for a lot of new and up-and-coming, like, I could probably do it at this point. I'm big enough that I've got enough of a reach that if I say, hey, I need people to test my game in German, I could probably get testers to do that. There's a lot of publishers who can't do that. There's especially new publishers who are just starting out. They're not in a position to do that, you know? So a lot of times they'll get a translation, they'll cross their fingers, and they'll hope for the best. It's really not easy. It's really, really hard. So I need to make so that's another aspect of it, and that's another part that that is really hard. So this is the phenomenon I was going to mention. So a game comes out with a terrible rule book, and somebody says, "Okay, I'm good at writing rule books. I'm going to rewrite this rule book." And they rewrite the rule book, and I say, "That's awesome." And I download the rewritten rule book, and I try to use the rewritten rule book instead of the original rule book. Well, guess what? The rewritten rule book is hard to read, impossible to read. I can't make it. It's ambiguous. I can't understand it. Why? Because that never got tested either. You know, it's not enough to rewrite the rule book. You've got to test it. Rule books have to be tested. So I think that sort of adds into that thought of, you know, they got this wrong because they weren't paying attention. No, they didn't get it wrong because they weren't paying attention. I mean, maybe they ran out of time. Maybe they ran out of resources. Look, I'm a purist. I want good rule books, you know. So I'm going to rail against bad rule books just as much as the next guy. But I will warn people that it's not a matter of just, pay a little more attention next time. You know, this is a lot to get right. Rule books are hard. They're extremely agonizingly hard. So when there's like one little misspelling in a rule book, you know, it doesn't mess you up, yeah, they'll fix it in the next edition. But, you know, ambiguous rules, vague rules, you know, those have to get shaken out. And I really, you know, as much as I've tested the rule book for the networks, I'm terrified that, you know, some gaming group is going to not recognize something. You know, they're going to find a seam in the rule book, like, wait, it doesn't explain this edge case. Of course I'm going to be staying up nights worrying about that.
Sure. It's sort of interesting, too, with the advent of the internet, too, that when folks come across something, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm trying to break myself of this habit, but you come across a situation and you're fumbling through the rule book and you're like, it's just not here. Or I don't know how we're supposed to interpret that. The first thing we do, and again, the gross generalization is go to BGG and see if anyone else has asked the same question. Whereas I don't even know when people started bringing German board games over here in the early 90s-ish, like when Settlers, you just kind of had to go with like, what do we think it means? And we've almost got this group conditioning, right, where we don't need to try to figure these things out anymore. We're just like, let's go to BGG, and we're blessed that resource. So I'm not going to complain about it because it is wonderful that a designer will answer your questions. I just wish, I think part of me wishes that we had more of, or less of the dependence on that and more of the dependence upon ourselves as the group or the individual to make a decision and go like, what do we think this means? How does this feel like it should work?
Yeah. And, I mean, I'm thinking about those pre-BGG times. There was a
it was
website
dark, wasn't it?
No. There was a website called the Games Cabinet. And, you know, that was back in the days when, you know, Mayfair had Settlers of Catan, but the rule book came in 2 sheets. And then Rio Grande was this brand new company. And, you know, it was so, and a lot of the games, if Mayfair or Rio Grande didn't have it, you had to get it from Germany. You had to get the import. So you got the game and you opened it up and it had all these German rules. so you went to the game cabinet and you downloaded the English translation. But, you know, the English translation, it was a translation. Again, it wasn't fully tested. So there was a lot of edge cases you had to work out of. So, you know, there were dark days, but they weren't totally dark, you know. There was, you know, I think Alt-Rec board games, you know, the Usenet group, where, you know, people talked about, and there were a lot of rule clarification threads on that also. So there was no BGG, but there was online chatter, you know, in the equivalents in the mid to late 90s. But then, of course, Aldi and Dirk founded BGG, and the rest is history. And it is an amazing resource.
Sure is.
BGG is extraordinary. So that's certainly helped me a lot, both as a gamer, a designer, and as a publisher as well.
You have provided a huge amount of insight to things that I never thought about. I consider myself, sort of more than just the gamer community. I mean, I have friends that are publishers, but you've illuminated a bunch of things that I never thought about. So,
oh, thank you.
I really appreciate that. I'm sitting here just kind of listening to you, going like, oh, I've never thought of it that way before. I'm going to be hypocritical. So let's talk about something less serious and perhaps a bit more fun. You just attended the illustrious gathering of friends.
Yes.
And this is a convention by invitation only, right? That Alan Moon, I believe, started many, many moons ago.
Yep,
Thank you.
I believe 26 years ago, I believe, was the first one.
So how did you ever find yourself on the invite list to that?
Well, it took me 3 years. I did a lot of lobbying. I did a lot of, I'll say begging. And
that's honest. I like that.
And eventually I found my way in. My invite actually came from the webmaster for the convention site, David Tome, who I knew through playtesting in Albany. So he got me the invite, and I'm ridiculously grateful to him.
Cool. That's awesome. So you guys were in Niagara Falls. Is it always there, or is that just where it was this year?
It's these days. It's always there. It's been in Columbus, and I think it was somewhere in Massachusetts before then.
Okay.
But it's now in Niagara Falls, the U.S. side of Niagara Falls. Alan lives in Syracuse, so this is convenient for him.
Oh, he's in the snow belt.
Yes, he's in the it's held in April on the U.S. side of Niagara Falls, so I have to imagine that the ballroom space is fairly inexpensive. The hotel's really good. I think the hotel's extremely responsive. And, if you've attended a lot of conventions, you've seen a lot of hotels that just couldn't be bothered.
Right.
And this is a hotel that's really responsive. So, he signed contracts, like a multi-year contract with them. Nice. And I think he's really happy with them. And I'm really happy with the hotel also. I think it's one of the better hotels.
And that's a moderately short drive for you out there on the East Coast.
Well, I'd say it's 7.5 hours. So
it's shorter than it would take me. Honestly, from where I am, it would be faster to go through Canada. Like, I'm not even kidding, because I could cross in Detroit into Windsor and just basically drive straight across Toronto.
Yep, absolutely. Oh.
So at the gathering of friends, I see all kinds of Facebook pictures. You appeared in a Facebook picture from Debbie Owie.
Yep.
Which I said you had a look on your face. I don't think she was taking a picture of you, and I was like, that's a great picture, because you just look very serious and like you were about to say something completely and super important. So what did you get to play there that was really awesome?
I think my two favorite games of the convention, new games that is, I finally got to play Nippon, and I really, really liked that.
Jeff Gamble told me that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's very, very good. It's my favorite What's Your Game so far.
Okay.
I didn't really like Madeira much. I thought Zhang Guo was really cool, but for some reason it never comes out to the table. But I really like Nippon. The only thing I would house rule with that is, like, it's a very tight game.
Right.
Like, the game is a really tight economy, and there's a way you can really screw another player, and I would relax that rule a little bit. For those who have played, there's the rule of when you go down into the territories, you have to place your resources down in the matching area. But you can bump another player even if there's another open resource in the same region. And I would change that to you have to go to an open space before you bump another player. So there still is a possibility of screwage, but you can't screw someone just for the sake of doing it. You only do it because there's no other choice. And I think that feels better in a game like this, which is already very tight on resources.
Okay.
So I think that feels better for a game like this. I'm hear that all those disclaimers, a game like this. There's more I want to talk about that, but let's get that in a second. The other game I played that I really, really liked was Haspelknecht.
That's the coal mining trilogy game, right?
Yes. And those who have followed me know that I'm quite enamored with the second game of the Coal trilogy, which is Coal and Colony. It's a sprawling mess of a game, but I think it's got a really nice. It's got a really nice heart, but it is a mess of a game. And the first game in that series, Rischerfurt, is I thought it had really good intentions, but the execution wasn't there.
Okay.
I wasn't crazy about it's a game that looks like it'll have a really nice decision tree, but it turns out to have a decision bush. It feels like everybody's just doing the same thing, and nobody's really incentivized to do anything different. You're all doing the same thing. So Haspelnucht, clearly Thomas Spitzer is really learning, because this is his third game, and it's a lot more elegant than the other games. There doesn't seem to be as much wasted motion or wasted stuff as in Colon Colony, which just, has all these different mechanisms in there. And they all work, but it's kind of a Rube Goldberg feel.
Sure.
Whereas with Haspelnucht, it all hums, and it feels a lot more elegant. It feels a lot better.
We need to get the Horsey Avenger in here for the appropriate pronunciation, but I'm pretty sure it's probably Haspelknecht.
That's totally possible.
I don't know. She's our resident German.
Yeah. So those as far as new games, those were two of my favorite new games. I'm trying to think if there was anything else, and I hope there isn't. I hope I'm not shafting any other games. Let's see. I played as far as older games. Phil Walker Harding was there. I think it was his first year, and he's the designer of Sushi Go.
He is, and brother of one of my buddies, David Harding.
Oh, cool!
Who runs David? Yeah, David does his grill games. He was on this show a few weeks ago.
Okay, that makes sense. So, I played one of his older games called Dungeon Raiders.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I was expecting.
Dude, it's great.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting anything, and it was phenomenal. It's this very light dungeon crawl, very light roguelike, but it's just really, it's got a real nice Incan Gold feel to it without being Incan Gold.
Oh yeah,
it's
you can screw each other over in the right sort of way.
Yeah. That's a game where there's screwage in the game, but it feels right. That's the kind of game that, because the economy is not so tight. And the thing that really struck me about it is, so there's one game that I think that I really liked from 10 years ago was Cleopatra and the Society of Architects.
Oh, that's a great game.
Just a crackerjack game. And it had two mechanisms in there that I really admired. And one mechanism is obviously the crocodiles, the corruption mechanism where you take corruption for doing great actions, like doing powerful actions, but whoever had too much corruption gets fed to the crocodiles. And this has a similar thing where you're fighting the monsters and you're losing health, but if you, at the end of the game, the player with the lowest health collapses, and then the richest remaining player wins. The player with the most gold, who doesn't have the lowest health, wins. So, that's got one thing. But Cleopatra has another amazing mechanism that I had not seen in any other, and that's this. So in Dungeon Raiders, you have your dungeon, and your dungeon is a set of, I think, 4 or 5 cards arrayed in a line.
Yep.
And the way you prepare the deck is you separate the deck in half, and you flip half of the deck. So one is face up and one is face down, and you just shuffle them together. And that's a mechanism that was first seen, as far as I know, in Cleopatra, where that's how the market was created.
Right.
So when you took something from the market, you got a bunch of cards, and you knew about half of them, and you didn't know the other half. And at the end of the game, if you have any corruption in your hand, you're stuck with it. So there was a danger to it in that taking a bunch of cards, you could take in a bunch of corruption. Whereas in this game, half of the cards are face up, half are face down. So you know about half of what you're facing in the dungeon, but you don't have perfect information. And okay, so I want to go on a tangent, but this is a really important tangent.
Tangent away, buddy.
So during the gathering, I had the pleasure of talking with Scott Nicholson and testing one of his prototypes. And we actually drove up to Toronto and back together. So we had 3-4 hours where we could just talk game design. And, someone as smart as Scott Nicholson, when he talks about game design, you really want to listen. So one thing we talked about is, and I don't think this is talked about enough, and this is something I want to start hammering home a little more, is that game design really benefits from user-based design, experiential design, experience design. So sometimes I hear people ask the question, like, what's your favorite mechanism? And I just raved about 2 mechanisms, but that said, I don't think it's enough to have a mechanism. There's no such thing as a good mechanism in isolation.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think there's such a thing as a good game in isolation. A game doesn't exist without players. And you need to always factor in the players when you're judging a game and evaluating a game or any of its components. So is this mechanism good? Well, it depends. So a great example, I just spoke about Nippon and how that Scrooge mechanism didn't work with me. Well, again, first off, you have to understand it's me, and I tend to be a low Scrooge person when it comes to a strategy game with a lot of planning. But I think another element is who is the kind of person who would play this kind of game. And I strongly believe that more people who play this game would prefer it without the mechanism than within. And maybe there's a little bit of an anthropic thing in there where I'm projecting my own beliefs onto everyone else, but maybe not. I really think that when you have a tight strategy game with a lot of planning, a lot of if you put some sort of Scrooge in there, that will diminish the audience. Now, this is something I've talked about on my blog. If you diminish the audience, but the remaining people love it and are rabid and fanatic about it, maybe it's the right thing to do. Again, but you're making these decisions with the user in mind, with the player in mind. And I think when it comes to games, you have to take that experience into account. So with both Nippon, I think the reason I'm making this house rule suggestion is I feel like when you take the player into consideration, I feel like that's the best move to do. And again, I admit that might be a selfish thing. There may be game groups that are just fine with it. Certainly the playtest group was fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
But you look at Dungeon Raiders, and that's a totally different audience. Sure, it's possible that players will enjoy both. I certainly enjoyed both games. Mm-hmm. But you're talking about a different engagement and a different appeal and a different experience. So, a game like that, there are going to be actions you do that screw another player. I'm going to take this treasure, which leaves you with a smaller treasure. And that is what you want in a game like that. You want that experience. You want to give players that opportunity to mess with the other players. And so the reason that works in one game and not the other is not anything to do with genre or the kind of game it is. It is entirely to do with the kind of players, the kind of experience that game provides, and how the players feel when they play the game. So I think this is like a plea I'm going to make with game designers, other game designers over the next year or two is, have an idea of the kind of player you want, the kind of experience you want when you make a game. If you play a lot of early prototypes like I do, you see a lot of games that are sort of trapped in 2 different things. Like, you have, okay, here's the bidding mechanism, and now here's the dexterity mechanism, and now here's the party apples to apples mechanism. Okay, well, those 3 mechanisms are great, and individually they may work really well in the game and they may tie well together, but my bet is that the resulting experience is going to feel extremely disjointed.
Mm-hmm.
So as designers, I think you have to really focus on the experience. Now, Jeff Engelstein came on my podcast at one point, and we asked him about theme or mechanism, and he said neither. He said experience. He starts with experience. He doesn't start with theme or mechanism. He starts with the experience. What kind of experience does he want to build? And that's a wonderful answer, because from the start, Jeff is considering the player. From the start, he's asking these questions of what kind of player will play this game? What kind of experience am I looking for my player to have? And these, I think, are the vital questions you have to answer as you start designing the game. You don't need them all answered before you start working on the game, but you definitely need to answer them as you're working through the first prototypes, because that makes everything else much easier. Because if you don't have it answered by then you have like this late stage prototype with this absolute gorgeous art, and then suddenly you got to scrap all that art because those mechanisms turn out they don't work. And the reason they don't work is not because they're bad mechanisms, but because they're not providing the experience that you need. If you have a game about if you have a game that's a dry bidding game, but it's about civilizing tribes of monkeys, on the moon and shooting them back to Earth. And this is a real game. It's a game called Monkeys on the Moon, and to me,
I was going to say I've played Monkeys on the Moon.
It's a great game, but I think the experience suffers because you hear the theme, and then you sit down, and the gameplay is totally different than the experience you expected.
Yep.
And in fact, it's jarring. It's extremely jarring because the gameplay is actually quite dry and Euro-y. It's a dry Euro-y bidding game.
It certainly is.
This is a game that would benefit from being about trading in the Mediterranean.
Yep.
I know that sounds absolutely silly and off the wall. I know people say, oh, another trading in the Mediterranean game. But no, there are reasons why there are trading in the Mediterranean games. And the reason why is because that is the experience, that promises the experience, and that sets the player up for the kind of experience it is. When you're playing a Stefan Feld game, you're expecting a certain experience. And I think, when he gets his weirder themes, like you look at Aquasphere, I'll be honest, Aquasphere was not a big hit for me because I found the theme a little distracting, I wanted the game to be about being in a sea station, fighting octopuses. But the octopuses weren't octopuses, they were just these numbers, and I mean, look, if a game has to be about trading in the Mediterranean or building a castle, or, impressing yourself with nobility, so be it, because if your game is about a mechanism, that's how you warn the user. That's how you tell people this is what the game is about, So the only mechanism that, stock Euro mechanism I have a problem with is bloodless colonization, but that's because that doesn't happen. There's no such thing as bloodless colonization. If you have a game about colonization, it must be a war game. I mean, that's the only honest theme. That's the only honest way to make a game about colonization is to make it a war game. The colonists versus the natives. That's because when you abstract them out, it feels weird. Like, I like Amerigo. I think Amerigo is an enjoyable game for me, but when I play it, it feels kind of weird. Like, so I feel like I'm missing half the equation here. Especially if you're going to name the game Amerigo. There's some expectation of a link to the truth, and it's weird that it's not there. So I find that strange. So one. A positive example is New Amsterdam. Did you play New Amsterdam?
No.
So New Amsterdam is an auction game, but you can exchange resources with the natives. But as the game goes on, the natives get harder and harder to get because they move farther and farther away because you're taking away their land. It's a depressing mechanism.
I was going to say, that's awfully realistic.
Yeah, but it's honest. There's an honesty there, and I think designers and publishers are starting to realize this. They're starting to realize that their games, at the very least, at the most generous, their games make really bad history lessons.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that, I think that's fine. I don't want to say. I think it's not that that's fine. Sorry, I misspoke. That's a little brain fart. I think that games make bad history lessons. I think if you're, some people can just turn that off and be like, okay, well, I don't care about the history. I just care about the mechanisms. And I think a lot of people can do that. But I think we're hitting a point now where if we want the industry to grow, I think we have to see our games as more than just a collection of mechanisms. We have to look at the overall experience. And this is one of the things in the experience is, like, what is the theme promising in terms of experience and what experience are we actually delivering? You look at Mombasa, and there's a section in the rulebook of Mombasa that says, look, this game is about the colonization of Mombasa, and there's a whole dark part of it where the game doesn't address.
Yep. And
this is simply because it didn't fit in the game mechanisms, but we wanted to take the space to at least acknowledge it, you know?
Right.
So at least there's some honesty there. You know, there's an acknowledgement that that it wasn't just, putting a piece down in the middle of India and that's it. Then that there's nobody else living there. That there's real blood and grime going on. So yeah, it's I'm glad that people are starting to talk about that element, because that's one of my least favorite elements of Euro games, is this kind of Bruno Fauditi calls it Orientalism. There's like this embracing of exoticism without really understanding it or knowing it. There's also like this tendency to whitewash history and just see it. Like, you look at the cover of Goa. Now, Goa is probably my favorite game. Look at the cover of Goa, look, if you're going to have a game called Goa, put someone Indian on the cover.
So I didn't know that Goa was a play skill for a while and then I was like, oh, this makes a lot more sense now. So,
yeah. Goa is a city in India.
Right.
So if you have a city in India.
Have Indians?
Yeah. Don't put like a white guy on the cover. That right. Seems kind of weird.
Right. He's not even a Spanish guy or a Portuguese guy. He's just a white guy.
I think he's supposed to be like someone from the Dutch East India Company, but anyway, I mean I can see why they do it. They do it because their target market isn't India. Their target market is Europeans, and the Europeans want to see themselves on the cover. But I don't feel like that's an honest way to make a game anymore.
All right, buddy. So before we wrap things up here, tell everybody where they can get in touch with you, social media, and your website. You mentioned your blog, and that you have a podcast, which I guess I shouldn't be surprised about, but tell everybody all about it.
Okay, well, let me start with the podcast. It's called Breaking Into Board Games, and it's all about breaking into the board game business. I think we just came out with our 16th episode, or we're about to anyway. So we're sticking around, and we're doing. I'm really happy with it so far. We approach breaking into the board game business from the perspective of a new designer, a new publisher, and a new developer. A developer being the guy who, or I should say, the person who sort of sits between the designer and the publisher and either punches the game up to make it work better, or that tries to make it fit within the publisher's line. So that's the three perspectives that we bear on. And normally what we do is we'll have an episode where we interview people, but every once in a while we'll have an episode that's just the three of us. And the three of us I do the publisher role because I'm a relatively new publisher. Ian Zhang is the developer, and Tony Miller is the designer, and they're my two co-hosts. And they're absolutely phenomenal co-hosts. So the three of us will interview someone. We've had some great guests. We've had, of course, now I'm blanking on all our guests. We had Seth Jaffe on one episode. We had Jeff Engelstein. We had Stephen Bonacore. So we try to talk. Oh, we had Joel Eddy. So we try to get a mix of people in the board game business, not just designers, but publishers, developers. That's why we had Seth Jaffe on. He's a designer, but he's also a developer.
Sure.
So we wanted to get that perspective of a game developer. And we've had we had all sorts of interesting people on the show. One of my favorite episodes, like one of the pieces of advice that we give and that you hear everywhere when it comes to breaking into the business is go to a convention, go to a game convention and make yourself heard. But the problem is some of us can't go to game conventions for various reasons, health reasons, family reasons, job reasons. Some people just can't attend conventions. So we have an episode with Sarah Reed, who's the designer of the game Project Dreamscape, along with her husband, Will. She and Will made that game. And Sarah is not in a position to go to conventions because of health problems. So that's exactly what we talked about in the episode. So you can't go to a convention. How do you get a game published? And, I think those are interesting and important questions to answer. And those are the kinds of things that we try to talk about in the show.
Cool.
Yeah. I'm really happy with the show. And I can't wait for less. We're going to have another year of phenomenal interviews and episodes, and it's going to be really good. So that's one place you can hear me is Breaking Into Board Games, the podcast, and we're on iTunes and any place you can find podcasts. Another place you can get to me is Twitter. I'm Gil Hova. That's Gilhova, V as in Victor. And I'm on Twitter a lot. You can find me on Instagram with the same thing. And you can find my blog at gil.hova.net.
And you're also, your BGG is what, Ingredient X?
Ingredient X, yes. Though, that's a little harder to get to. But yes, that's my BGG handle.
Well, buddy, as always, it's a pleasure talking with you. We will, you and I hit on some topics in there that I would love to talk about more, and we'll do that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. Because
you and I, we have such an easy time talking to each other. It's that wonderful New Jersey connection.
Yeah, it must be.
Well, thanks so much, buddy, for coming on the show, and we will talk again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.
Our sponsor of the week, as always, GameSurplus.com. We mentioned them in the intro to the show, where we ordered Food Chain Magnate. Unfortunately, those are out of stock, so I'm glad we ordered when we did. They ripped through them.
I'm not surprised at that.
Nope. I'm thinking hopefully they'll get
price.
more. Yeah, they had a ridiculously good price on it. Hopefully they'll get more so folks can check that one out, and we'll probably do a review of that in the not too distant future.
Yes.
But first, let's talk about the new titles they got in this week. They got in Above and Below, which they are now stocking. Yes.
Okay.
Which is very cool. That's on our shelf. That was one of my birthday presents, so we have to get that played. Looks like they have restocked Lords of Vegas and the Lords of Vegas expansion. You have not played Lords of Vegas, but that's really cool mixture of a choir and a dice game. Very clever.
Really?
Yeah, it definitely gives the Vegas feel. There's some gambling and just the way the dice rolls work. You're almost betting on dice rolls. It's very neat. They got Merchants and Marauders restocked. Merchants and Marauders.
Merchants and Marauders. Say that a couple times.
No, thank you. No. I had a hard time saying it once. Yeah. Patchwork, which is another one of our favorite 2-player games.
Yeah.
And just for you, the Russian Railroads, German Railroads expansion.
Nice.
Boom, which I believe allows you to play that game with 2, and also add some stuff, which apparently really spices up German Railroads. So for all your gaming needs, check out www.gamesurplus.com. They specialize in imports and other hard-to-find bits of joy and wonder. And follow them on the Twitter at GameSurplus.
And now the moment you've all been waiting for. Cardboard Insanity's Game of the Week.
Horsey Avenger, you are lacking street cred as a gamer. We're working on building you up. But there's some classics you haven't played, and there's some modern classics you haven't played. And Seven Wonders is one of those games.
I know. And we even have Seven Wonders on the shelf. And
we very rarely... We don't do a lot of multiplayer gaming. It's usually you and I. And so I had thought about teaching you Seven Wonders as a 2-player game, but I know the 2-player rules, I've played them. They leave a lot to be desired. It works, but it's not... To me, that's a game that says, it says 3 to 7 on the box, but you really want at least 4, and probably 5 or 6 is really the sweet spot on that game. So as a 2-player game, I didn't think you and I were ever going to play it. Then, lo and behold, they put out the 2-player version, Seven Wonders Duel.
Yes, it is.
Also published by Repost Productions. This one is designed by Antoine Bauza. He designed Seven Wonders, but he's got some help from Bruno Cathala on this one as well.
Well, that's pretty good credit there.
Yep. Oh, for sure. It's quite the pedigree. Now, if you already know Seven Wonders, a lot of this is going to sound very familiar to you. So I will try to emphasize the differences between Seven Wonders and Seven Wonders Duel. But also, I want to talk about this from the perspective of people that have never played Seven Wonders at all, which would be you.
Exactly.
For starters, unlike Seven Wonders, you don't have a military track. You sort of just keep track of it by the cards in front of you, and you're comparing your neighbors. In Seven Wonders Duel, there's actually a board that has a token on it that's shaped like the military symbols, the shield with the swords, and it has a track that goes from player to player, and there's a sliding point value at the bottom. So that is actually going to track the military. Since you're going head-to-head, it's basically a tug of war. On this. And one of the victory conditions for this game is if you get the military piece all the way to your opponent's side, you actually instantly win the game.
And you actually pulled that off yesterday because I didn't pay attention.
Exactly. Yes. There's also 5 goals. I don't even know if I want to call them goals. They're the bonus tokens. These are... There's 5 tokens. Progress tokens. There's 5 tokens, I cannot remember the name, that are going to go also on this board. Sort of on top is just a holding place. I believe there's about 10 of them in the box. For any given game, you're going to put 5 of those out. And those are going to work off of the science cards and provide you some sort of bonus. And the science cards work very different than Seven Wonders as well. You don't have these goal cards, these progress tokens, anything like that in Seven Wonders.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay.
Also, in Seven Wonders, each player has a wonder board. So you have a wonder, and you're trying to build 3 different stages of it.
Okay.
In Seven Wonders Duel, there's a deck of 12 wonder cards, and there's a preset configuration, so each player will get 4. Once you play the game a couple times, you can sort of draft them. And so each player has 4 different wonders that provide completely different benefits.
Yes.
So that's one of the big differences there. Now, similar to regular Seven Wonders, players have coins, and then there's the 3 ages decks, just like in the base game. That part, conceptually, is very much the same. The biggest difference here is that this is not a card drafting game in the traditional sense of passing the pack of cards around the table. So in Seven Wonders, just like a Magic draft, each person gets dealt out a hand of cards. They pick one, they pass the rest to everybody else, and then they all simultaneously play their card. And this happens till the whole pile has been played through, except for the last card, which gets discarded. In Seven Wonders Duel, you're going to lay out the cards for each age in a different pattern. And they're going to be alternated face up, face down. So, for instance, age 1, the front row is face up, the next row is face down, then face up, then face down, then face up, tiered from the widest to the bottom going up. Round 2 is that same shape, but it's inverted, with the smallest cards being at the lowest level, the smallest number of cards being at the lowest level. And then the third age is sort of a circle, which is very interesting. Now, your turn works sort of like drafting. You're going to pick one of the cards, and then it's going to be your opponent's turn. The difference being that as soon as one of the face down cards has no cards over top of it, so essentially, I'm trying to think about how I can describe this, each card supports the card, 2 cards support the card above it, essentially. So like a pyramid. So as soon as the 2 support cards are off of a face down card, it then gets flipped up. So you have an added little bit of stress here. Now in Seven Wonders, or any drafting game, Sushi Go, that's one that you've played. Okay.
I've played that.
So in any of those games, you're drawing a card and you're passing it, and you can see what your opponent wants to do by what's on the table. So you're trying to not only take what you want, but also try not to give them things. Well, this face down card thing is so cool, because you do not want to be the person who's flipping that card face up, because then your opponent has first dibs at it. And that happens. And sometimes you just don't have a choice. And some of the player turns revolve around trying to force your opponent to do that, which is really cool.
Yes.
So the rounds are very simple. You play until all the cards are taken. You have 3 ages. Then the game is over. You score victory points, just like Seven Wonders. That part's all the same. A lot of the iconography is the same. The same resources are in the game. Your clay, wood, stone, glass, and papyrus, right? Those are all the same. There's the monument cards, the construction cards. Those are the blue cards. Those work sort of the same way. They have a building cost, and they also have victory points they're going to give you, and they can also be chained just like they can in Seven Wonders. So some of them will show an icon. Seven Wonders, it actually lists the card names, but these very cleverly have little icons on it,
which
so
makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, you just match the icon. With the cards being small, it's convenient. That's the other thing I would say to people. At Seven Wonders, the cards are huge. I think they're tarot card size.
Oh, okay. They're really big.
Yeah, these are the small Euro size cards. So like I don't know what, 2 inches by 1 1/4 ballpark.
Yeah, same size as the Rose King.
Same size as the Rose King, Sanssouci, Oregon. This is your standard small Euro card. These are a pretty standard size, these small Euro cards. So this game does not take up nearly as much table space as Seven Wonders does. Seven Wonders gets very sprawling. But let's talk about how the gameplay works, so anybody that hasn't played Seven Wonders will understand. Again, on your turn, you're going to take a card from the display. Now, the card's going to have sometimes building requirements. That's going to be resources you have to have, or money you have to pay, something like that. If you have the resources required or the money, you take the card and put it in front of you. If you don't have the resources, you can buy whatever resource you want. It costs you a base 2 coins, plus 1 for each other symbol of that type your opponent has on their cards.
Right.
So there's a little bit of brinksmanship in that if you can see that maybe I want to get wood, you'll just start hoarding the wood cards, then I have to pay for them.
Yes.
So you will do this, and again, we mentioned the chaining of the cards. You'll continue to do that, spend your money, do things. And then the building of wonders works similar to Seven Wonders in that you basically would take a card and you would tuck it under one of your wonders. In Seven Wonders, you tuck it under one of the 3 stages. Okay. And then you have to pay the building costs. So you have to have the materials or whatever it is.
Right.
And then you get a benefit, whatever that benefit is.
Mm-hmm.
This game sort of zests it up a little bit in that each of the wonders is very different from each other. For instance,
they all have different abilities or points or values that you get.
Some of them give you coins.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them will give you straight up victory points. Some of them will let you take an extra turn, which is a really cool ability, especially in this game. Sometimes they'll give you bonus shields for military. Sometimes they'll give you, let you destroy your opponent's cards, which is very nice. So they sort of morphed the non-confrontational nature of Seven Wonders and turned it, since it's directly head-to-head, in that it has an immediate effect on the other player, which is very nice. So the other thing you can do with a card on your turn is if you can't build a portion of one of your wonders, or you can't put it in your display, you can discard the card, and you'll get 2 coins plus 1 extra coin for each yellow card in your display. So it gives you an emphasis on collecting the yellow cards, which are typically your markets and things like that. Again, you do this for 3 ages, and the game's over. And you're going to score points. So you'll score points for your blue buildings, which are essentially monuments and construction and that sort of thing.
Right.
Science cards will also have points. And science cards are special in this game. There's 6 different symbols of science cards, and there's also one of the progress tokens has a 7th symbol. If at any time during the game you end up with all 6 of those symbols, you immediately win.
Yes.
Which I snuck one out.
Another one that you snuck out yesterday.
Yep. So each time you get a matched pair of science cards, you also get to take one of the progress tokens, which is a nice bonus. So again, this puts a little emphasis on not just taking the science cards because they're worth points in Seven Wonders. In Seven Wonders, it works as for each of the symbols, there's 3 symbols in base Seven Wonders.
Okay.
And for each set of 3 you score points, and then for each type of symbol, you score the square of how many cards you have.
Okay.
So the science cards basically have victory points straight on them.
Right.
Or they don't, and they're not worth any victory points, and they're just there to help you get pairs.
Yeah.
So I think that does a pretty good job of illustrating the gameplay and also the comparison to Seven Wonders. What do you think about this game? Now, you've never played Seven Wonders, so you're evaluating this game purely on its own merits.
Yeah, I never played Seven Wonders. I like
Big butts and you cannot lie?
Well, that too.
Okay.
But I like that the cards are hidden, and like you had mentioned before, that it becomes a turn where maybe I don't want you to flip over the card because then, or I have to take the card because then you have dibs on this.
Right.
So you really have to pay attention to what your partner's doing and what type of cards they take. You can have totally different strategies. Also on the wonders, I know I've played games with you where I didn't build a wonder at all.
Right.
And I was able to pull off a win just based on other victory points that I gathered throughout the game. So I love that there's this nice variety for how you can win the game.
Right.
There's not one strategy. The cards come up differently every time. You can build different strategies on it. And I love the interaction that it creates between the players.
Yes. Agreed. I like the fact that I have to pay extra money for each good you have of the type that I want to buy.
Yes.
So in Seven Wonders, if I want to buy what I can buy from the player to my left and right, if they have something I want to buy, it just costs me 2 coins. There's no extras. In this game, you get severely penalized if you don't have at least some of the resources.
Don't I know it? I played one game with you, and I just could not get resource cards to save my life.
Yes.
Could not.
Well, and that brings up another interesting point. Each of the age decks has 3 cards removed from it at the beginning of each age. So you may have 3 resource cards taken out of age 1, and if you do, that really tightens up the resource availability. You know, it greatly changes from game to game, or even age to age. So if 3 resource cards come out in age 1 and then they don't in age 2, well, now all of a sudden you have a chance to pick stuff up and get ready for the third round.
Yeah.
So it also impacts scoring, which then changes the actual valuation of other parts of the game. If you know your scoring is going to be lower because you're not going to maybe be able to build some of the building cards, the blue cards, then that's going to force you to go, okay, I need to work on being able to chain things, or okay, maybe I'm going to work on military, or I'm going to try to get the science victory. It really, that creates a lot of flux in the game, and it does it in a way that you don't see in Seven Wonders. Seven Wonders has the same thing where you only play with so many cards each age, but this game does it better because I think that random 3 being taken out, since it's just 2 players and you'll get to see essentially all the cards, definitely changes the emphasis of the syllables. So the other thing, I mentioned the military track early on. I love this. In Seven Wonders, you compare your military total, the total shield you have in your cards, to each of your neighbors. Okay. And then they will lose points if they're less than you, and you will get points if you're greater than them. Okay. This game has a track that basically you're going to, every time I get a shield, I'm going to move the shield token 1 step closer to you. Now, initially, the first section is worth 2 victory points. So if the game ends and I have the shield there, I score 2 victory points. So you're scoring direct victory points that your opponent is not scoring. If you get to the next section, it's got a 5 victory point symbol, but it starts with a -2 coins on it. So as soon as you get to that level, that comes off and your opponent then loses 2 coins right away. If you get to the next tier, it's 5 coins and then it's worth 10 victory points. So wherever the military ends on this is the points you will get.
Yeah, and you have to pay attention to that, as I have learned the hard way.
That's one of the interesting things about this game, is that if you sort of blatantly go for the military or the science win, you'll see what I'm doing. But if I'm like sneaking it, you know, yesterday I pulled a great strategy where I built one of my wonders that allowed me to take the progress token, one of them that's not in the game.
Yes.
So I took one of the scientific symbols, I think it's law is what's in there.
Yes.
That gave me 5. And then there was 2 other symbols on the board. So basically...
And I didn't realize that and because of the progress token.
I played it perfectly and was able to get myself in a position where you couldn't win.
Still a little bitter about that.
It should be. It was masterful.
Yeah.
That was the stuff of legend.
Oh, good God.
So,
I think I just saw your head swell.
A little bit. But that's just because I'm retaining water.
Yeah.
Too much salt. So that said, what do you rate Seven Wonders Duel on a scale of 1 to 10 wonders?
1 to 10 wonders. Wonders.
Why?
No, I'm not going to go on. This is not good. I'm going to give it a 9.
Really?
Yeah, because I love games that create great interaction between players and have this wonderful change in strategies every time you're laying it out. You don't know what you're getting. You can think ahead about what you might want to plan, but until you see the cards, and the cards are going to come out differently every time, you really can't plan ahead of what you're going to do. You have to there's a very tactical sense to it. Agreed. And I like that.
There is a lot of tactics. You can have, I don't believe you'll have any strategy necessarily in the first 6 or 7 cards you take.
No.
Because you have to see what you can take, and if you can force your opponent to go the direction you want. But there starts to become some strategy in the second game, or the second age. Definitely. Do you think the game is too tight in that? I guess the best example I can give you is a lot of 2-player games and a lot of Euros get sort of penalized for this, in that they're designed to keep scores close. Do you think this game does that?
I don't think that it does that. I mean, I like how you can score in different phases. Like you said, you can get scoring from the military track, from the science track, and the wonders. So there's different components to it, which is why you have this little score sheet.
Yes.
I actually like that because I can try and add up where I'm at, but sometimes I think you get distracted by if you try to track how far ahead you are compared to your opponent, that takes away from the gameplay to me. So I like that I don't really know where I'm at. I think I'm in a good place, but until we do the final tally, I really don't.
I like the fact that...
And I like that.
I like that we've had games that have had big point disparities. So I said a lot of times these games are designed to be within a couple points. They're designed to keep it so that no person darts out too far ahead. That's sort of viewed as a bad thing in a lot of games. But you and I have had games where I have just exploded out, and you're just like, I can't catch you.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't mean that you've lost, because you do have the opportunity to win by military or science.
Right.
And if you blind me with science, then you can still win, even in the face of insurmountable odds.
Yes.
I would rate this game a 7.75.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
I really, really like the gameplay. I want a little more.
Okay.
I want something to take it just to the next level. I'm not sure exactly what that is.
All right.
But and I'm sure it's designed this way because this is the base set. It's a little bit vanilla. I would like just a little bit more.
Well, just wait until the expansion comes out, which I'm sure it's in the works.
I'm sure. That's my only gripe against it. Maybe more card variety.
But that's another really nice thing that I like about this. The way the game is set up, that you can expand it and add variety and change to it.
Agreed.
Easily enough.
Agreed. Yeah, it shouldn't be hard to... I imagine the first expansion will take this game to that perfect place for me. That's my only gripe against it.
I just really enjoy it right now. I'm having so much fun with it. It's one of my favorite 2-player games.
Our games are tense. They're always tense. They're always competitive.
Yes.
There's...
In a good way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not in the same way as the Rose King. It's a different sort of tension because you're not typically messing with each other.
Right.
But there's am I going to be able to get what I got to do? Like, I know what I want to do. Can I get to this? How can I get to this? What can I do? How can I pull levers and turn knobs to get this thing to happen? Can I push you to do the thing I want you to do? Like, can I make you think that that's the thing you want to do?
Right.
Maybe it is actually the thing you want to do. Then I'm in a whole different world of hurt. So gameplay wise, I would normally rate this game like a 9.5, honestly, but it's just missing that little extra spark for me that I know is going to be there in the first expansion that's going to make it killer. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm sure they know what it is. But in our house, there's no need for Seven Wonders now because we'll never play it 2-player.
No, I do want to play Seven Wonders.
And Seven Wonders is a fine game, but to me, this is a much better version of Seven Wonders. And they did maybe the coolest thing I've ever seen with making drafting work in a 2-player game. Can you imagine playing Fairy Tale or something like this? That'd be so cool. Yes. 2-player Sushi Go like this. It'd be brilliant. So, if nothing else, this game has done something sort of revolutionary with this card display that I think that idea is a 10 out of 10. That's brilliant. So, 9 out of 10 from the Horsey Avenger, 7.75 out of 10 for me, but pending the expansion, probably closer to a 9.5. They'd have to work awful hard to get that rating to drop. So. This is another one of those games that if you play a lot of 2-player games, if you like Seven Wonders and you don't get to play it, or you play the 2-player version just because you like the game and you sort of suck it up and you play it, just buy this.
Yeah, just get this.
MSRP on this thing is $30. You can get this for like $20 online. It's a ridiculously good game for $20.
Yeah.
Highly recommended. Well, Horsey Avenger, we've done another episode.
I know.
We've done a lot in a row. I think we might take a week off next week.
We may have to.
Maybe work on some video reviews.
Is next weekend Memorial Day weekend already?
Sure is.
Wow.
Boom shakalaka.
And we have a nice game day planned with Herc and family.
Yeah, we're going to play with the Hercules family, and we're doing another Store Splash next weekend for Marvel Munchkin at Nerdagedding. What's wrong with me? Nerdagedding. Good Lord.
Yeah. So there's a lot of gaming coming up, so we might have to take Memorial Day off.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, but since we're going to be playing a lot of games, we'll have a lot of content for the next
we
week.
do.
And you have some great interviews
I know
lined
what's
up.
lined up immediately after that, and then I know what's probably lined up after that. So there's plenty of stuff coming, and we have a good one. We have lots of good ones, and I don't like to make anybody think anybody's more important to me than anybody else, because I love talking to everybody. But I have one that I'm pretty sure even everybody that's been on the show would probably say, like, yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah.
So that's coming up in the beginning of July.
I can't wait to hear that. I've had to wait because you won't let me listen to it.
I can't wait to hear it. I'm not even sure I
because
remember
I wasn't even here because
you weren't here.
you had to do it in the morning, and I was at work, and I was waiting for that phone call or text message to kind of clue me in how it went.
It's tough to coordinate stuff on those European schedules.
That it is. So I can't wait for that to come out.
Me neither. So thank you to Gil Hova for being an awesome guest on last week's episode and this week's episode. That guy's so much fun to talk to. I just love the passion and the intensity and the limitless ideas and creativity that man has. I say this all the time. I'm just so lucky I get to have these conversations with folks, and then everybody gets to hear them. It's awesome. I just get to talk to so many great people. You know, I just interviewed my buddy Pete. That'll be coming up at some point. Pete Ruth,
that would be fun.
One of the top 3 most hated men in board gaming, but an awesome guy.
He has such great energy.
He does.
Such
Pete's
great
so
energy.
intense too. He's. I think if you put Pete and Gil in a room together, the room might implode. I mean, there's just so much creativity and intelligent thought that comes out of these folks that I get to talk to. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I love the conversations. It's kind of like sitting in a coffee shop and eavesdropping on on somebody next to you having a great conversation. That's what I feel like the interviews are like.
I'm glad I could indulge your voyeuristic tendencies.
No, thank you.
Creep.
Oh, you had to take it to that level, did you?
Yeah. Well, if the shoe fits.
You did.
So thank you to Gil for being an excellent guest, and if you haven't checked out Bad Medicine, check that out. I know he got his first copy of The Networks in, his pre-production copy not long ago. So that'll be coming out. I think Kickstarter backers are getting that pretty soon.
Okay.
And then it'll be available on retail channels. So that's good. He's very excited about that one. And his Kickstarter, by the time you guys are listening to this, will be very close to wrapping up. So if you haven't backed Second Opinion, do it, because you'll be able to get the Bad Medicine base game at the same time.
Exactly.
We just got our copy, or we would have reviewed it. So thank you to Gil. And thank you to GameSurplus.com for hooking us up with Food Chain Magnate.
Yes.
Of which I'm so stoked we have. And for always having fantastic customer service. They really are class act over there. Really, really great people. Velma's doing a great job over there. So go support those folks. And if you're in Michigan, come see us at Nerdageddon on, I think it's 28th. Is Saturday the 28th?
Yes.
Saturday, May 28th. We'll be there from 12:30 to 5:30 doing Marvel Munchkin, but we could probably be convinced to talk about, play, demonstrate.
I'm sure we're going to
elaborate upon.
We'll have a bag of games with us, and we can talk about just about any game you want to.
That's true, we can. So we will be back. We will be back soon. Probably not next week, probably the week after. I want to take a week off.
I think it would be good to take that weekend off because we have a lot going on.
We do. And we'll be back with even more awesome content. So thank you, everybody, for listening. Keep an eye on the Twitter for the video review that's going to be posted up there. And always check the blog for new information. Also check the blog for my friend Suze Korb. She revealed the cover for her. She's doing. I don't know if you read this.
I did.
She's doing a blog, or she's writing a novel live, a chapter a day, for Patreon followers. And this lady writes a lot of books. So check that out. Just as something completely different. This is a super ambitious project. And when NaNoWriMo time comes around, I'm totally going to have her on the show to talk about being an author.
Yeah, you should.
So I think that'd be great for my fellow nanos.
This will be your second one this year. So
it's coming soon. I got to get the ideas rolling. Speaking of ideas rolling, let's roll out.
All right.